So I've been invited to have a chat to Ellie Gibson. I really wanted to speak to her because she's been through an experience very similar to myself in starting out in stand-up. So thank you for having us, Ellie.
Thanks for coming.
And tell us a little bit about how you got into stand-up.
So I got into stand-up quite late. It wasn't until after I had my first baby. And I think I'd always sort of wondered if it was something I could do. Because my dad was a stand-up. He doesn't do it so much anymore, but now and again. So it was always sort of in my life. But I guess I thought, what if I try stand-up and do it, and I'm terrible at it? And then that dream shattered. You know, and so, you know, I thought, well, but then I had a baby and I thought, well, look, if I can push a human being out of there, I can definitely stand in a pub and tell some mediocre jokes to some people. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go.
And you said that your dad was a stand-up. How did that help you when you were starting out?
Well, in some ways it was less helpful because, again, there's a thing of like, well, if your dad's a stand-up, you should be able to do it, and what if you can't, you know? But he was very encouraging, definitely. He hadn't been on the circuit for a while, so he certainly didn't help me get any gigs or anything like that. But he's very supportive, and especially now, he's 70, he just turned 70, right. But he roadies for me and Helen, my comedy partner. So quite often, like if we've got a gig in North London, he'll drive for us and help us unload all the props and do the tickets and sell the books, and we take him out for a curry, and everyone's happy.
Everyone's happy. Everyone's a winner.
Yeah.
Do you find that because he's kind of been there and done that with stand-up, that he's got a good eye for what works, what doesn't? Is he honest with his feedback to you?
He loves to give feedback. Quite often he'll drop me and Helen off, go home, and then a couple of whiskies later there'll be the email at sort of midnight with a full review of the show and what he thought worked better and didn't this time. But as I say, he's always very supportive and it's always constructive. But yeah, he's definitely a very honest critic, which is great, which is what we need.
I think because for me, when I started out, I've been taking my brother along with me, who's been doing a lot of filming, and a good friend of mine, Ben, who's been helping out, and they're very much honest, like you say, in their critique. They don't hold back in telling me what they think might work better. But we did an interview with a guy called Ollie Double.
Yeah.
You know Ollie Double?
He's interviewed me and my dad for his thing, actually, for the archive, yeah.
So he said that actually having that feedback and having somebody there who's seen the show a lot of times or seen your routine a lot of times and who can just pick up on what's going on, fast forwards the process for you developing. Do you think that's true
definitely. I think that's great, and I think and that's one of the reasons we love having Dad along is because exactly that, he can give us feedback on, you know, and sometimes because he is very experienced, he did it for a long time, and he was in that first generation of alternative comedians. So the first wave at the Comedy Store, so Ben Elton and Alexi Sale and all that. So, I mean, when he did it, comedy was quite different, and he used to go out there sometimes at 3:00 in the morning, just in front of people who were absolutely off their faces. It was really gladiatorial back in the day. So he knows a lot about handling crowds and hecklers and things and stuff, and he's really good about passing on advice about that. So that's been handy.
And what was his advice for dealing with hecklers specifically, or difficult crowds?
Shouting seems to be quite a big thing. He talks a lot about how you've always got to be the one in control.
Yeah.
So you can't let them see the whites of your eyes, and you've got to remember that the rest of the audience is on your side. They want to enjoy the comedy as well. They don't want to listen to this pissed up idiot shouting abuse. They've come to see you and to be made to laugh. And so you've got to remember that they're with you, and you just need to show them, to have confidence in you that you're in control and you're going to sort this person out. And, you know, but it's tough, as I'm sure you know.
Well, I haven't had too many bad experiences with hecklers yet.
Right.
I'm sure Edinburgh will bring plenty of those.
Oh, it's good though. It's all good training. It's good.
So when you started out, and I first heard about you reading an article where it talked about how you'd done 100 gigs in the first year. Was it your first year starting out that you did?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
And that really resonated with me because when I first started on this journey, Ben said to me, "You're going to need 100 gigs before you do Edinburgh." So, what do you think you got from that first year?
I think for me, just it's about a physical thing of just being able to get up on stage and not feel as nervous, you know, because I'm quite an outgoing, confident person generally, but even for me, just to get up on a stage at first was a little bit. And when I first started, I don't know about you, but I used to kind of get up and go, here are my jokes, I will read out my jokes, hopefully you'll laugh, I won't really bother waiting to see if you do or not, I'll just do another joke. And it's about getting over that kind of hump and kind of getting more into like flow and not being frightened of the audience or the room and being able to engage it and read it and all those little sort of magic tricks and skills that you can't get on a course or in a book. You can only get it by doing it. I mean, I did a course and the course was great. And the course got me over the hump of sitting down to write a joke, looking at a blank piece of paper and going, you know, because we had homework, so you had to do it. So then so I thought, oh, okay, I can write jokes. But then getting up and saying them is a different thing, and you can only do that by doing it.
Because I did a course as well when I started out, and met a whole broad range of different people who were all doing the course for very different reasons. They weren't all desperate to be a stand-up. There was a girl from Australia who was just new to the country and thought it'd be a great way to meet people. There was a guy who was terrified of the best man speech that he had to give, so wanted to do a bit. Did you find that there was a range of people, and did they continue doing stand-up after?
Yeah, I had the same experience, and that was one of the things I loved. I to be honest, like if you go to a comedy club, especially like on the open mic circuit, you do see mostly 25-year-old white blokes in check shirts, and that's fine, and some of them are hilarious, and that's all fine, but I kind of thought it would be like that. But no, it was this incredibly diverse group of people. There was someone doing it for a bet. There was someone who had been given the course as like a birthday present, so they were like, I'll just do it. And then I remember week 2 or 3, I'd written a bit about, I think, dinosaurs. And I think I basically was ripping off Bill Hicks subconsciously. I thought I was the next Bill Hicks. So I'd written this thing. So I kicked off with like, any fundamentalist Christians in? And 2 people raised their hands on a stand-up comedy course. And I was like, well, this is amazing. The bit wasn't offensive, so it was all fine, but it was hilarious. And but those 2 men were just brilliant. They became really good friends, and we're still like friends now on Facebook and stuff. And we got on really, really well, even though we're from completely different ages, backgrounds. But comedy sort of was something we had in common and could talk about. So it's been lovely that.
And did you find? I think it's interesting that you say about this diverse range of people, but equally in setting that up, you talk about the kind of, I don't know, 20-something white middle class males that are everywhere on the circuit. Do you find that when you got beyond the course and you were out gigging that it was quite so diverse?
Well, no, as I say, I think on the open mic, I mean, I haven't been on the open mic circuit for a couple of years because I had another baby and sort of lost track a bit. But yeah, I remember most gigs, I would turn up and there would be me and there'd be up to 15 other blokes, all with quite a similar experience. A lot of them would have quite similar topics, and there were women doing it as well, of course, but not as many. But I think, I don't know what that's about really. I don't know if that's about confidence or about time or about who knows. But again, look, and some of those men are hilarious, but it does get a bit wearing.
Same old.
Yeah, it's the 48th joke about Tinder that night.
Yeah.
You can get a bit, and you're nearly 40 and you've never even been on it. You can be a bit like, oh, can we just
move on?
Yeah. And it was quite funny. My dad used to come to some of the open mic nights.
Yeah.
And he used to get very angry because he was in that generation of, oh, Thatcher, and down with the Tories and burn the witch and all of this. And he would come to a gig at like the Cavendish Arms and there'd be 20 people on and nobody would do any political jokes at all. And I took him to a gig one night and it was the night Thatcher died. And he was like, I can't believe out of 20 comedians, no one's even mentioned the fact that the witch is dead.
Not been referenced at all.
Yeah, and I did sort of point out that most of them weren't even born when she was Prime Minister. But I thought that was an interesting thing, yeah.
And that's another interesting thing that you're touching upon with this idea of talking about what's relevant or talking about what's topical or even as much talking about what's going on in the room around you. And it's something that I've been really kind of conscious of, I suppose, as I've been trying to develop, is being able to say something that is for that night, that something that is... Did you find that happened over time as well, that you got more comfortable being able to move away from the script as such?
Oh, definitely. I think, again, that is something that only comes with experience, is that confidence of I can go out a little bit here and I can do something specific to this crowd or this room. And you also learn that there are tricks and ways to do that to make it look like, you know, you've just come up with it. Or quite often Helen and I do a gag, if we're going somewhere posh like Tunbridge Wells or something like that, you know, we'll say, well, we've come here from South East London on a cultural exchange, and next week you lot are coming to Catford to teach us all how to use Ocado. And people really like that, because they like that we've recognised that they're a bit posher than us, and that's a sort of good bit of local colour. But actually, it's I've ruined it now. I've broken the circle of children's trust.
It's not all spontaneous.
No.
Oh, the magic is gone. Okay, so sort of backtracking a little bit, if I can. The article that I was talking about that I read was based around this premise that Eddie Izzard said after 100 gigs, when he was asked for advice for new comedians, he said, go and do 100 gigs, and after 100 gigs you'll know what to do and you'll know if you're any good. What did you know at 100 gigs that you perhaps haven't known at the beginning?
I'm trying to think now. I think I knew I could sort of do it. I knew I could get up there and tell jokes and get some laughs. I think, if I'm being honest, I also knew deep down that I was never going to be necessarily someone, you know, a megastar like Catherine Ryan or someone like that. I remember actually seeing Catherine Ryan at a gig I was doing 20 minutes at, and I'd gone on, I'd had a pretty good gig, and I was like, yeah, this is great, it's a proper comedy club, it was all great, it was an open mic, I was like, yeah. And then she came on and I was like, oh my God, like I'm never going to be
at that level. Yeah.
That's amazing, and I can't copy that, and I don't think I can emulate that. And me and my husband talked a lot about it and argued a lot about it, because I was like, but maybe I could, if I just keep going, if I do another 200, 300, 400, 500 gigs, maybe. And he was a bit like, but I don't want to go through that. I don't want to do another 400 bedtimes on my own while you're in Camden talking to 14 drunk people for no money.
Yeah. And
then you're exhausted the next day, and quite often, you know, by the end of the week, just really downtrodden, and all you can do is sit on the sofa. He was like, that's very tough on me, and he really pushed Scummy Mummies.
Right.
He said, you know, with Helen, you've got a defined, I don't want to say product, but that's what it is. You've got a defined thing that you're doing, and you've got a defined audience who want to pay money to see it, because there's nothing else like that for them.
Yeah.
And the competition is much less fierce, because you're the only people trying to do that. So he really pushed me to do that, and I was like, no, I think I can make it, man. You're just crushing my dreams. And then I had another baby, and I was like, oh no,
it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. We'll just. I'm interested in that, because you know, a big part of my story, I suppose, is the impact that it's had on my wife, and as you say, doing all the bedtimes, keeping the house going, and then having to pick me up when I come home and I've had a bad gig and it's not going well, or I'm a bit stressed because I'm meant to have done some writing and I haven't done it, and I'm annoyed at myself, and she then gets the brunt of that. Other than stopping doing it, was there a way through some of those things?
Well, you know, when I got pregnant with my second child, that kind of, so what happened was I got pregnant again, and I had him 2 months early.
Right.
So at 7 months I was still gigging, not as much, but still gigging quite heavily. And in fact, I got food poisoning on Friday night. On Saturday, Helen and I hosted an event called the East Dulwich Christmas Cracker.
Right.
So, which is outdoors, us in the leotards and the catsuits for 8 hours. I'd been vomiting till 5 a.m. It wasn't great. It wasn't great scenes. And the next day I went into labour, and I had this baby. I had Joe, my lovely, darling son. And he, because he was 2 months early, you know, he was very poorly, and he was in hospital, it was intensive care. And then we had this show booked 10 days later.
Right.
And we'd sold out. We'd sold like 150 tickets or something. So to all these women who were turning up at this pub. And Helen said, you know, we'll cancel the show. And I was like, no, let's do the show. And she was like, you're crackers. You're off your nut. And I was like, no, look, let's say we're going to do it. And, you know, because I'd had a cesarean as well. So I was like, even if I have to sit on a chair with a clipboard instead of a script, like, we'll do it. Because I was mad. I was mad with grief and mad with having had a baby, which I know you've got kids. It does. Woo. So, so we did the show, And I look back and I go, yeah, I wasn't very mentally well then. But you know what? It was a great gig.
You
We had a
enjoyed it.
fab
Went
time.
really well.
Yeah, it was a Christmas show. It was hilarious. We loved it. We did Frozen, I think. She dressed up as a snowman. It was brilliant. Yeah.
So because obviously we're doing Scummy Mummies, you're talking a lot about your experience of being a parent and presumably a little bit about your relationship as well. How does that sit with your husband and how does he cope with you going on stage and sort of bearing all about your life really?
He's all right. He's all right with it. He's seen all my stand up and yeah, he likes it. He's quite happy. He's not. There's been a few incidents with the podcast.
Right.
Because Helen and I record the podcast. Usually, we have a few glasses of wine,
Right.
and we really tell the truth. And you know, our husbands don't really listen to it, but their workmates do.
Okay.
So I told a story once about how Pete at Latitude had gone out and got wasted, and I was pregnant and looking after the older one, and he'd come in off his chops, and then he tried to go out and have a wee completely naked, and I used a phrase like, you know, and there he was showing it off like it was the Christmas turkey, and then one of his colleagues came up to him at work and went, Christmas turkey, eh? And he didn't even know
What the reference was.
Yeah. So he then had to listen to the podcast, and then he was pretty hacked off. I told the story. So now, because I edit all the podcasts myself, so now if I think there's something a bit dodgy, I'll check with Helen if she wants to ask Will, or I'll play it to Pete and say, is this all right? And usually he says yes.
So you're being very fair then in
Well, we're just trying to avoid more marital disharmony than there already is. So, and with the book, like we showed them each the sex chapter, because that was the first one we wrote, and obviously they're one of a number of people we sleep with. So we thought they, you know, and they read that and they said that's fine. And we trust you to. Yeah.
The rest was all good from there.
Yeah, I don't think they've actually read it, to be honest. But
so you weren't tempted to slip some stuff in just to make sure that they read it. Just so
we should have.
You should have done.
We should have drawn pictures of their penises on page 74.
There you go. And make sure they go through the whole lot.
Yeah.
No, I had the closest I came to that. I had this joke, and she was fine with me telling this joke about how I talk about how it's annoying when my wife comes home from shopping. And says, guess how much I paid for this, and guess how much. Right, but there was a true incident.
Oh, like is she like a bargain hunter?
Yeah,
right,
guess how much? And I'm like, I don't care. But she, I think to spark my interest, one day came home, guess how much I paid for this, and if you get it right, I'll give you a blowjob. Right. So obviously, I went straight on stage and told this story and made a thing of it, and it was fine. She didn't mind me telling the story until one night she was in the audience with her dad. Sat next to her dad.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm told, although I didn't see her myself, that she just sat with her head in her hand, waiting for this bit, knowing the setup was coming.
Oh, that's
But I forgot it that night. I forgot the joke, so I didn't do it anyway, and I got away with it. But she was not best pleased with me.
So is she not a big fan of the whole stand-up thing for obvious
No,
reasons?
she. Do you know what? She's been absolutely lovely. She's been brilliant about the whole thing, and she. When I first thought of doing it, I said, all right, I'm going to plan to do this documentary next year, so 2017. I'll go up to the festival and see what it's like and check it all out. Then I'll spend a year learning how to do it, and then I'll do it in 2018. And she went, no, you won't. If you're going to do it, you're going to have to get on a plane in 3 days' time and go, and then you're going to have to spend this year learning how to do it. Because otherwise you'll either plan so hard that it becomes not spontaneous or it becomes really fake, or you'll just talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
So she has been brilliant about saying go and do it and really supportive. That's not to say it hasn't been difficult, and she hasn't found times where she's wanted to, in her terms, smash my face in. But she's been lovely. And then I kind of feel really bad because I then go on stage and say, oh, my wife did this, or she annoys me with that. And, and the truth is she's been lovely the whole time and really supportive. So.
Yeah. Oh, it's hard though. It's hard to work it all out, and I think you just have to. Yeah, it does. It helps now, to be honest. It does help that Helen and I are making money. You know. So yeah, it is my job now.
Yeah.
And I think that shifts
the goalpost slightly.
Yeah.
How have you found kind of juggling your comedy career alongside having a family and having young children and a husband, how does that all work for you?
Yeah. Well, in some ways, comedy's ideal because most of it is at night, you know. So I get to not have to do bedtime. And then I'm out working while they're asleep, but then I'm there in the morning when they wake up and I can take them to school. So in that respect, that can be really good. But then also, especially when I started out and I had a main job as well, because you do your proper job all day and then you're knackered and then you've got kids and then you've got a gig and then you have to do it all the next day. And I would be getting home, especially when I was pregnant as well, I'd be getting home from a gig in Hammersmith at 12:30 and then having to get up with a 3-year-old at 6:30, and I was exhausted. And I think that for me was the big struggle. Not so much the time management, which you just can work out, it's just a pain, but just the sheer exhaustion of all the travel and just sitting in pubs for 3 hours waiting to go on and do 5 minutes of comedy. That was, just mentally and physically draining, I think. Do you...
Yeah, everything you're saying
Yeah.
is I'm just thinking about it all, thinking, oh God, what have I put my wife through? Because you're right, you travel to the gig and you're focusing on what you're doing, and then you're right, you can be sat there for hours at a time waiting to do this 5 minute, sort of 10 if you're lucky, and you kind of think, was it all really the whole package of an 8-hour round trip?
Yeah.
Was it worth it for that 5 or 10 minutes? But then, so what is it about stand up then that? Because there must be a reason why we all do it. What is it for you that does make it worth it?
Well, having just whinged about how awful it all is, I do really like pubs. And that because Charlie was 18 months old when I started, I hadn't really been to the pub much, and that used to be one of my, God, I sound like an alcoholic, but that used to be one of my favourite things, and still is, to do, is just go to the pub and chat to people. And I was a video games journalist, I still am. So I spent a lot of time hanging out with blokes in pubs, talking about something that we both liked.
Yeah.
And then I had a baby, and suddenly I was having coffee with mums, which was all very nice, but talking about nappies, which I was not super interested in. I'm sure they weren't either, but when you're tired, that's just what you talk about.
do, yeah.
So to get back into this kind of world of meeting new people who liked a thing that I liked and drinking with them was really nice. There were awful nights where it's like, oh, it's dreadful. But there were lots of nights where it was a real laugh and I made really good friends. And of course I met Helen and stuff like that. So that was fun. But also, I think really, you'll know this, it is like a drug. It is like getting up there and making people laugh, or when people come up to you afterwards and say that was great, or tweet you or whatever. There is nothing else
quite like that feeling, yeah. I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it is, isn't it?
It's a massive ego wank is what they say. It's just like having a wank with your ego. There's nothing else like it.
So your previous experience then in gaming, and as a gaming journalist, and obviously combined with comedy, took you down a path of going to work on Go 8-Bit.
Yeah.
How has that shifted kind of your working life, and how has that changed things for you?
Well, I actually I had a part-time job, so I worked on this website called Eurogamer for a long time, and then I had kids and went to 2 days a week. And then after the comedy started taking off, I quit that, but I still do freelance and things.
Yeah.
And then, I met the blokes who made Go 8-Bit, and I thought it was a brilliant show, and got to know them and helped me out with some stuff. And then when it came to the TV show, they needed a games expert, basically. So I auditioned and got the part on that. And that was all brilliant. And it did feel like, to be honest, the culmination of a life's work. It was like, oh God.
This is what I've been waiting for. Yeah.
This is why I spent 15 years writing about bloody Wii Sports Party or whatever it is. And because I realise now I was sort of honing my craft, because I always would write reviews that tried to be quite funny and talk about games in a not very serious way. And here was this TV show, and I get to go on it and do that on telly with Steve and Sam and Dara, and it's been brilliant fun. It's been really good. But also it is a strange experience because you go and you film the show, and there's Dara, and obviously he's a massive star and hugely talented, and you get your makeup and your hair and your wardrobe, and there's all these runners and researchers bringing you coffees, and it's all dressing rooms and bouquets, and it's all lovely. And then you have to go home and change nappies and go to Lidl. And you're just like, oh, I felt like a celebrity yesterday, even though I'm not. But today,
real world,
Yeah.
back in the real world.
Yeah.
And I'm interested because I had a little watch of Go 8-Bit, and I was interested in. Do you write your links and stuff like that for bits you're doing?
I have help. I have. So in the first series, I wrote everything myself,
Right.
and that was 6 episodes. And then they said, we want 2 more series. We want 20 episodes,
Right.
which is 100 games.
Wow. Okay.
And I said, I can't
Write
write
all of that.
100 VTs
Yeah.
about 100 games in the time frame. So my friend Dan Whitehead came on board, who I've known for years. He's another journalist, so he helps write the VTs. And then there's a writer called James in the studio and a writer called Dom, and they write some of the links. We work together, but I have final say on everything
What
I say.
goes in.
So if you think a joke is bad, either it's mine or they've written it's bad, but I
And
think
you
it's
allowed
funny.
it to go
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's interesting because it's not stand-up comedy, but there's certainly elements in what you're doing there. That, how do you think that's kind of fed into what you do? For example, I was noticing things like Rule of Three in what bits
I
like
love
that.
the Rule of Three.
Yeah.
I've been criticised on the internet for my love of the Rule of Three, to be honest. I probably overuse it, but yeah. No, that's definitely come in handy. And again, just having the confidence to go, well, I am funny, actually, I can, which I think, I was complaining to a friend, a 25-year-old man in a check shirt, actually, on the open mic circuit when I first started. And I said, God, I wish I'd done this when I was your age, when I was 25, because I'd have so much more time, and I didn't have kids, and I didn't have all this stuff. And he said, but you wouldn't have been ready to do it then. You're not the person you are now. You wouldn't have been as confident. And if you'd gone out there and done it and failed, as everybody does sometimes, it would have crushed you. Because in my 20s, I was all like, that's a complete disaster. Whereas now, everything's perfect. It's not, but
yeah.
I'm more grounded and centred.
So obviously, as part of Scummy Mummies and the stage show, you do a little bit of stand-up, but you don't really do stand-up alone.
I don't do any solo gigs
anymore.
No.
Do you think that you'll ever go back to it? Would there be anything that will draw you back into doing stand-up?
At the moment, no, because I'm tired. But Helen just did a solo show at the Melbourne Comedy Festival, and she did a few previews here, and that was brilliant. And to go and watch her was amazing, and she was fantastic, and it kind of did give me a little pang of, oh yeah, I remember when I used to do that. But at the same time, Scummy Mummies has taken off in ways we just never expected. The podcast has done really well. It's usually number 1 on the kids and family chart. We've had a book out of it, which is doing well, and we're doing these live shows, and it's just all, and the social media thing, which again we had no idea. Instagram wasn't even a thing when we started, and now we've got like 30,000 plus followers, and and so all this stuff has happened that we never predicted and didn't exist when I was like, yes, I'm going to be the female Bill Hicks. I'm never going to be that, is one thing. So part of it is I love what we're doing and it's working, and part of it is I have to be honest with myself and say, maybe if I really kept plugging away for years and years and years and years, maybe I could get really good and make it. But realistically, that's a bet. That's not a sure thing.
Yeah.
And that's a big gamble. And what I'm gambling is time with my kids, pissing my husband off, not having as much money, and those are big chips to put on the table. Am I taking this metaphor too far? But that's what my husband used to say to me, and I used to argue with him, but I now agree. It's all a gamble, of course it is, but Scummy Mummies feels like a surer bet than Ellie Gibson, the stand-up comedian. But having said that, I really loved being on Go 8-Bit and do something that wasn't about parenting. And I would love to do more telly and presenting.
Something else to talk about that means something to you.
Yes.
Maybe that will take you down.
Yeah.
See, because when I started out, it was very much focused on Edinburgh. It was, I'm going to get to Edinburgh, I'm going to do this year, I'm going to get to Edinburgh. I didn't really think beyond it. The more I've gone through the year, the more, like you said, it's like a drug. And I'm like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to just stop. Yes. I think I'm going to have to keep going somehow. I might scale it back a little bit in terms of doing 4 nights a week down in London and doing a day job as well. But I just think that there's something, and I was interested to know if there's always this little desire to just go back.
I think, but I think that's the nature of the person you are, we are. I think there is, I remember someone said to me, or did I read it somewhere, The thing with stand-up is, it might be my comedy teacher, Chris Head. The thing with stand-up is people want to know what's wrong with you. Actually, I think it was Richard Pryor. Some dude said, the thing with stand-up is the audience wants to know what's wrong with you. They want to know what's wrong with you that has made you get up on a stage and talk about your innermost stuff, which to most people who are sane is anathema, because it's crackers. Like, why would you want to do that? So, basically, there's something wrong with us as well.
Essentially, yeah, we're messed up in the head. Good.
And will never be cured. So you're right. But I, if someone said to me tomorrow, you've got to stop doing all comedy, that would be that would be a real loss. And I know Helen loved doing Melbourne, and it really gave her a real taste for it. And so she might take a solo show somewhere else here. Well, I'm doing more Go 8-bit or whatever.
Yeah.
And, I think she really enjoyed doing that. So, but keep going.
Well.
You could be the next Catherine Ryan.
Or I'm definitely not going to be the next Bill Hicks. I
think we all know there's never going to be another Bill Hicks. I think let's be honest. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you. So
thank you for having me. Good luck with it all.
Thank you.